This is Bonjour Chai. The only thing orderly in Canada right now is the Order of Canada edition. I'm Avi Feingold in Montreal, and I'm here with Alana Zakon in Toronto and David Sklar in Calgary. We are your Frozen Chosen. On today's show, we go deep on the new Order of Canada recipients, and I speak to Rabbi Daniel Korobkin about his op-ed in the CJN on dealing with the fallout from the Chaim Walder scandal. But first, Alana, David, it's been a while. Happy New Year. Happy Secular New Year. Shana Tova, all that stuff. What's been new in your lives?
Back again. What's new, David?
Last week I performed on stage as a giant dinosaur.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. Wait, is Calgary shutting down theater now too, like Toronto?
We will no, absolutely not. No, we're always
so
the last
lucky
to do all the shutdowns. We're going to look at Ontario, we'll look at Quebec, and only when it's past the precipice will we decide to shut down. So our theaters, while limited capacity, still remained open. So I'm involved in a show called The Dinosaur Tale, and I dress up like a huge dinosaur. It's like 50 pounds that I wear, and I dance around the stage. It's a fun little play for kids. But we got to perform, which was great.
Is the run not over yet? Like, do you have more shows as the world is crumbling around us?
I know. Well, there was always talk about like extending it and going on a cross Canada tour, which may happen in the future if COVID ever comes to an end. So, Saskatoon, pay attention. We may be coming to your town in the future. But at the moment, probably nothing for at least 6 months.
Yeah, fair enough. I took a total break. I actually went camping, if you can believe it, in a 1970s refurbished trailer for 5 days last week and did a little artist retreat. So I brought a whole bunch of writing material and my ukulele and art supplies and basically did art.
You play the ukulele?
Fun. I do play the ukulele and I sing.
Whoa, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Can we have a ukulele cover of our theme song at some point?
Ooh, we can look into that. What were you going to say, David?
So I was just going to say, is this the first time you've been camping?
In my life, no, but I've never been camping in the winter. Though we did have a propane heater, so it's not like I was in a tent on the ground. It was with walls, insulated.
So this wasn't like glamping at all.
It was a little glampy, except for the fact that there was the toilet situation was very interesting, and I won't disgust you with the details, but it was that was an experience. But the cabin, the trailer itself was insulated, but we were in the middle of nowhere on Crown Land near Parry Sound, in the middle of trees and snow, and when we made a bonfire, we were still very cold.
See, this sounds like my personal horror
story. Did you just
story.
refer to unceded native land as Crown Land?
Isn't that what it's called when it's Crown Land? Like when it's free?
Oh, yeah,
free
but only if
use.
you're an imperialist colonialist.
Oh, whoa.
Oh,
this is taking
we're
a
starting
huge
early
turn.
this morning.
What did you get up to, Avi?
I got Omicron.
Oh,
I
yeah.
gave it to all my family.
Oh, no. Did you get symptoms?
I got a flu for a couple days.
Okay.
Honestly, like I had the worst because I kept joking. I remember the very early days of COVID, like 2 years ago. I remember joking with a friend. I was like, oh my God, you should just go to China for like a 1-day visit and come back. You'll have to quarantine for 14 days. I'm like, it's great. You won't have to go to work. You'll be away from your kids. Nothing will be like, it's the greatest vacation. You say, it's not my fault. And I have to go in quarantine is what we were thinking about. And I was like, oh man, quarantine could be kind of okay because I can just hole up in my bedroom with books and movies and I can't cook, so food will have to come to me and that's it. And then I got sick for 2 days. It turns out that I gave it to everybody. And so on the third day when I was actually feeling better, we opened up the house because everybody was sick anyways. So I didn't even get that like long extended quarantine that I was looking forward to where I could read 30 books in a week and a half. And nope. That's
an interesting way of looking at it.
Looking at what? Quarantine?
Yeah, quarantine, getting COVID. It's almost like you were kind of looking forward to it, and you were like, "Drat! Now I can't even enjoy this." I was
thinking that one of the side benefits of doing that, aside from the immunity that you get from COVID, after having gotten it, was like maybe I would get some alone time. And in a house where kids are on Zoom school and they've been on Zoom school for the past month or they've been on vacation, you don't get a lot of space where you get to just do your own thing. And I didn't get that either, but it's fine. I did a lot of pretty crazy puzzles. I I did one that was like this art piece. We've been talking about puzzles. We always talk. Chris Ware, who's a big graphic novelist, took several panels from one of his big graphic novels called Building Stories, and he turned them into a puzzle. And I did it sight unseen, like without looking at the picture, because it's not on the cover. It's only on the back inside, and it was very difficult. But I did it. I had fun, and that was basically it. We haven't done anything cool or interesting. Everything's shut down here.
Quebec
I got
is
to a
real
bar
shut
on
down.
the night before the shutdown of like bars, restaurants are shut down. Everything's like, it's not helping. It's like everybody's really frustrated at this point.
Yeah.
And they must be super tired at this point again. And
Same
again
in
and again.
Toronto. Everyone's pretty fed up.
We're done. And that's really, I feel like, the Egyptians at the end of this week's Torah portion, where it's like, okay, fine, Israelites, go, get out of here. Right, we're done. We've had plagues after plagues after plagues, and it only takes like Pharaoh to finally let everybody out. But somebody, please, let our people go.
Hear
and
that,
where would we
Justin
go?
Trudeau?
Anywhere, doesn't matter. Off the island of Montreal. So it's been a quiet month or whatever, and looking forward to getting back into the swing of recording these every week with you guys.
Ditto.
Amen.
Today's episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Atelier Lou Bijouterie in Montreal, Quebec. Atelier Lou specializes in watches and custom designed jewelry along with a curated selection of designer jewelry. Visit us online or in person, and Eric Goldberg will help make your jewelry dreams come true. Atelier Lou is offering a promo code for all Bonjour Chai listeners using BON18 at checkout for 10% off your order at atelierlou.com.
Last week, the Governor-General of Canada, Mary Simon, announced 135 new recipients of the Order of Canada, one of the country's highest civilian honors. 18 of those members are Jewish, and we've decided to take time this week to speak to some of them. We're about to hear interviews we did individually with Rabbi Baruch Frydman-Kohl, Cara Tannenbaum, Jane Heyman, and Olga Korper. And after those, I have a brief chat with Rabbi Adam Shire of Congregation Char Shamayim in Montreal about the remarkable number of members of the Order of Canada in his congregation and what that means. But before we do that, what do you guys make of the Order of Canada? Is it like something that's on your radar in general because of the arts world, or is it like something big, something not?
I'll just say, what a auspicious number. 18 Jews this year? What a magical number. That makes complete sense. Does it mean anything? I know people have brought it up in the past, and there have been members of the artistic community who have received the Order of Canada, and it's always a nice thing. When the phone rings next year and I pick up, and I will gladly accept the Order of Canada. I'm waiting any year now. I'm actually curious, like, what does it really mean other than a recognition? Do you get some prize money with it? I know you get to meet the Governor General. Do you hang out in Rideau Hall? What is actually, like, in a non-COVID world, what happens when you receive the Order of Canada?
Well, the most significant thing, I think, is that you get a pin. I mean, you get an honor, you get an award, and you get a medal. But there's a pin that's a small version of the medal, and you wear it on your lapel all the time. And
for the rest of your life?
Pretty much. And
it's a Canadian rule.
It's not a rule, but you're expected to wear it all the time. And it's a really nice thing when you meet people and they have that and you know what it is, and you're able to say, wow, that's really cool. What'd you get it for? Mm-hmm. And you get to talk about their career and their work.
I mean, I think it's impressive when I find out that someone has been a recipient of it. Do I check to see who is every year? No, except for this one. But
does your mother call you to let you know that so-and-so...
Oh, definitely.
Who's Jewish got the Order of Canada?
Yeah, probably. I mean, even that's kind of what happened this week with Cara, who you interviewed, David. She actually grew up going to the same synagogue as my grandparents and my mom, and told me how much she has such fond memories of my grandfather giving her candy underneath his tallis at Shul. So it's kind of cool when you think about someone that, my family has known for decades who's now receiving this big order. I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of the Order of Canada. I think that Canada does civilian honors really well and usually picks the right group of people, and it's a very respectful and respectable thing that we do. It feels very Canadian to have this big Order of Canada. And there are, every country has, France has, the Chevaliers in various disciplines, and the U.S. has the Liberty, the Kennedy honors, and, there's so many countries that do this. I like the way Canada does it. I think it's a beautiful thing, and I always look forward to the announcements when they announce, and who do I know that's on there, or who do I know of that's on there. And I'm liking the fact that we're about to go and hear from 4 of them. Joining me now is Rabbi Baruch Frydman-Kohl, who is the Emeritus Rabbi at Beth Tzedek, and the award that he received for the Order of Canada was for his spiritual and community leadership as head of the Beth Tzedek Synagogue in Toronto, and for fostering interfaith dialogue throughout Canada and beyond. Welcome to Bonjour Chai.
Boker Tov, good morning.
Excellent. So, what's it like being recognized after all these decades of leadership?
It's actually been quite amazing to hear all of the comments from people in the community who I think take a great deal of pride in their connection to me and in this honor that's being given to me. So there's a sense that while I'm being recognized, they are also being recognized. And I want to say that my feelings actually were a bit ambivalent. I was both honored by this, but also very humbled, because I know that there are people who really are superstars in Canada. And, Sinclair, who was honored this year, is an example of that. And many of us are good at what we do. Hopefully we make a big difference for Canada, but there are real superstars. So I'm humbled at the same time to be among them.
Amazing. I know that you join a very small group, a select group of rabbis. There are other spiritual leaders, but I think we counted 5 total rabbis who have been honored with the membership in the Order of Canada. What's it like to be getting this in terms of spiritual leadership? I know that you said that it's about a community, but you're in august company with Rabbi Gunther Plaut, Rabbi Reuven Bulka, and others. What does it feel like to be a rabbi representing the Jewish community in that way with the Order of Canada?
It's deeply moving, actually. I have wonderful colleagues, and they extend across Canada and across all of the denominations. And everybody I know works very hard. It doesn't matter whether it's a big congregation or a small congregation. Everybody is really working hard, trying to make a difference for their community and for their city and for Canada as a whole. And to be picked out, to be selected by Canada and by the Governor General is really especially meaningful. But it also is a way of saying that all of the rabbis, on some level, do this kind of work, and all of us really understand how important what we do is for our community. But this is a way that the Governor General, that Canada, as it were, recognizes Jewish spiritual leadership.
And I know that one of the things that is mentioned specifically is that the work that you did fostering interfaith dialogue throughout Canada and beyond. If you can tell us a bit about the work that you've done in that place and where you think it should be going. Where's the future of interfaith dialogue working towards?
Sure. So I've worked with a lot of different communities, and we have tried both locally in terms of our neighborhood interfaith group, but also in terms of our Path of Abraham, and now what we call sharing perspectives, to bring Jews, Muslims, and Christians to Israel and to Palestine, and for them to have the experience of understanding 3 religious traditions and 2 people in one land. So we've worked very hard at trying to encourage and making people aware of the complexities of all of those relationships. Locally, I've worked very much with the Muslim community We have developed rings of peace around mosques at times when they have felt threatened, and they have in turn reciprocated with rings of peace at times when our community was threatened. I've worked with the Catholic Church on serving on a bilateral commission for Jewish-Catholic relations, and actually just finished a major article that's going to appear in a festschrift in honor of the Cardinal here on Catholic-Jewish relations over the last 30 years in Canada. And one of the things that is clear is that these kinds of conversations and dialogue have some long-term implications, both in terms of reducing conflict, but also in terms of encouraging better relationships and building an awareness that we are in some way all in it together. One example of that was in Toronto after the terrible ramming by a van and the killing of 10 women along Yonge Street. I wrote a letter to some people saying, we should have some sort of interfaith gathering. And out of that grew, a number of other people took it over, and it grew into a major statement of solidarity and vigil, to which a lot of people came, including the Prime Minister. And I was able to say at that time, in Canada, we don't run away from challenges like this. We run toward people to help them. And that's an important message for all of us.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rabbi Baruch Frydman-Kohl.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Avi.
Cara Tannenbaum is a Canadian researcher and practicing physician in the fields of geriatrics, women's health, and gender research. Since 2015, she has been the scientific director of the Canadian Institutes of Health Research's Institute of Gender and Health. Cara, welcome to Bonjour Chai.
It's a pleasure to be here. Shalom.
Shalom. Mazel tov on receiving the order. How do you feel?
I feel so humbled and honored by this recognition, which I wish I could share with so many people. Everyone I know works so hard to give charity, to contribute, to better the lives of Canadians. And it's really the wonderful people that I work with every day that makes the magic happen.
So I'm curious about the people that you work with. If you could sort of give me like a brief history of your career and some of the work that you've been focusing on.
Well, I think I was exposed to being a leader when I was young. My mother was president of Hebrew Foundation School when I was 8 or 9 years old. My father, Heyman Tannenbaum, married to my mom, Marion Tannenbaum, is one of the most generous people I know. He's a physician. And my mom, believe it or not, was discouraged from becoming a physician because she indicated that she wanted to have a family and children. And was she ever determined that her 3 daughters would then become physicians and help others in a way that she wished she had? I went into medicine, and it was when I was working in the coronary care unit that I saw that older men and women were treated differently when they had a heart attack. And this, of course, is going back, to the 1980s, 1990s, when men went immediately to the, cardiac cath lab, and they went for surgery for their heart attack. But at the time, many women were just given hormone replacement therapy. Some people listening will remember that. And I said, wow, that's so cool. Women and men are treated differently. What does the science have to say about that? And when I did my research, I found out that older women were often excluded from the scientific research on which we base our treatments for different medical conditions. In fact, there were, 8 out of 10 drugs withdrawn from the market between 1990 and 2000 because they were either fatal or had more severe side effects in women, because female anatomy wasn't even considered in the drug development process. I've dedicated my life to looking at medication safety and ensuring that both sex, biological factors, and gender, social factors, are taken into account in the development of treatments, of policies, of practices, so that everyone gets the care and health that they deserve.
That is fascinating. I work part-time as a recreational therapy aid worker in a senior's residence itself. So I know that this comes up a lot. So I was just wondering, what do then we as a society sort of feel is changed when we're dealing with senior citizens and the types of medications that they are receiving, or the type of care in general that they may or may not be receiving?
What a lot of people don't realize is that several of the medications that have been on the market for a while were only tested in, well, people like you, David, young, healthy men. And yet, as we get older, sadly, our physiology isn't quite as robust as it was when we were younger. For instance, women in particular, but older adults have greater fat to muscle content, and many drugs linger in fat tissue. I'm thinking specifically about sleeping pills, which tend to stay in the blood and tissues much longer than when you're younger, so that when you wake up the next morning, the effect of the sleeping pill is still in your body when you drive your car, and has been associated with an increased risk of car accidents and drowsiness and confusion and lack of attention. But no one really talks about that. And so, if you don't mind me kind of pitching the link to the Canadian Deprescribing Network's website, an organization that we set up, it's www.deprescribingnetwork.ca. And what we've tried to do is develop very clear, plain language informational brochures about different classes of medication and how they affect your body with age, what side effects you might expect, and what are safer, sometimes non-drug therapies that you can use. For instance, if you want to have better sleep, you could do cognitive behavioral therapy and other things. Now, you can't deprescribe all medications, obviously, but there's certainly value in asking, is this still the right medication for me, or can I stop one of them? When I teach the medical residents and students, I always say, if you're going to prescribe a new medication to someone who's older, maybe see if you could deprescribe one at the same time.
Just because I imagine, and I'm even thinking of my parents right now, with all the medications that they happen to be on, that things might be mixing and causing more problems down the road too.
You got it.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure many people are just worried about, we're just over prescribing. And this is something that I wanted to also ask too. Sometimes I think about the lobbyists in the U.S. in terms of the pharmacare lobbyists, and just trying to push medications on the doctors at all times too. It's not something I tend to think of a lot going on in Canada, but has your research or have you found that this is something that is still occurring even in our Medicare Canadian system?
Fortunately, direct-to-consumer advertising for medications is not legal in Canada. So you don't see the big billboards that you might see in the United States. And we have become very rigorous around transparency if physicians talk to pharmaceutical representatives. Now, I don't want to completely bash pharmaceutical representatives, because many drugs and new chemotherapies and new immunotherapies save lives. So thank goodness we have medications on the market, and we're not where we were 50 years ago, because we have extended life expectancy significantly. But you're absolutely right. Many of these medications do interact. We know that up to 2/3 of older adults in Canada take one, what we call potentially inappropriate medication. And when I say potentially inappropriate, it means that it may no longer be helping them, or we might be able to give a lower dose of that medication because their kidneys may not be functioning as efficiently, and it may linger in the body longer. You mentioned medication side effects. They can lead to such things as falls, dizziness, confusion, leg swelling, and also account for many visits to the emergency room. Sometimes if you take diabetes medications like the sulfonylurea drugs, just for instance, it could interact and make your blood sugar go even lower than it should. So asking, is this medication right for me? Does it fit with my other medications? And are we sure it's not causing side effects that I then interpret as symptoms and get more medications to treat the side effect of those medications, what we call a prescribing cascade, are questions that older adults, their children, and their health advocates should be asking every time they go see a health practitioner. The pharmacist can answer these questions too. I think sometimes we forget how useful pharmacists can be. Anyone can make an appointment with their pharmacist to go over their drug medication list. And one thing that I've really enjoyed is working with pharmacists to try to promote deprescribing and educational brochures to be handed out to patients, which you could find on that website, www.deprescribingnetwork.ca.
Absolutely. I just want to know, is there anything else that you would like to mention for today?
I would just like to say thank you to everyone who's a health advocate. Many listeners go with friends, or at least they did before COVID, are the voices for their older parents who maybe need support, either getting to the physician or speaking up about their health. I would encourage people to be empowered, to learn more about their medications, to recall and ask, I'm a man, I'm a woman, is this the right medication for me? Is this the right dose? So we're very good at asking questions in Judaism. I learned that from my parents. I would end with the recommendation to ask more questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, and all the best for your Order of Canada.
Thank you.
Take care.
Here with me today, I have Jane Heyman. Jane has worked in professional theater in Canada and England as a director, stage manager, actor, and acting teacher for over 50 years. Throughout her career, she's developed new plays and created opportunities for women in the performing arts, including co-founding the Women in View Festival, working as the New Play Center's associate director, and facilitating the Wet Ink Collective's workshop for women writers. I'm very excited to have her here today. So Jane, hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Of course. I'm really surprised that we never met. I lived in Vancouver for 5 years and we never crossed paths.
I know, I discovered that by listening to your podcast, but how did that happen?
I don't know, and I'm gone already, but I'm glad we're meeting now. So first off, I wanted to ask you a little bit about what drives your work, because it seems like a lot of the work that you're doing is really encapsulated in the nomination that you received for the Order of Canada, which was for your long-lasting contributions to Vancouver's cultural landscape. And you see that you provided opportunities for emerging artists with Studio 58. You provided opportunities for retired or senior artists through PAL, opportunities for women. So what do you have kind of a through line of what helps you pick what kind of projects you want to work on to achieve those goals? Or is this just something that you kind of fell into being that person in the community?
Well, I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, since I found out that I received this award, which was overwhelming. I think it goes right. I mean, it's family, right? I think it's always family one way or another. You're either in reaction to your family or you are carrying on. And my parents were both Holocaust survivors. They escaped from Poland after the war started. They were part of the cohort of people who were saved by the Japanese consul Sempo Sugihara. And they ended up in Vancouver, despite Canada's racist policies. And after the war, my grandmother, who had survived the Warsaw Ghetto, also came to live with us. And my grandparents, all of them were social activists one way or another. My grandmother and grandfather on my father's side, they were on the board of Janusz Korczak's Dom Szeret, the children's orphanage in Poland. And I grew up knowing all those stories, and so I think both my brother and I drank the water that said, you have to do something to make the world a better place. Now, I didn't think of this consciously. I mean, it's only, you look back on your life and you go, there's a pattern here. And
yeah, for sure.
That's the pattern that I notice, as many people do, the people in our world who are disenfranchised, who are in some way needing a help up. And I've always been aware of the fact that I had a very privileged life, even though, my parents came here with nothing except a good education, and they both spoke English quite well. So that immediately gave them.
That's really rare too.
Well, that was my grandparents again, that languages and studying were important in the family. So they did, so I had a safe middle-class upbringing, and so many people in my position who are second generation didn't have that.
100%.
And my parents never let us forget that either.
Yeah.
it's a good thing, you know.
Yeah, fair enough. So do you see that as being a family influence then, that you have this drive to make a difference? Or do you also see that as like a Jewish passion or drive that brings about?
I think it's both. I
Okay.
really think it's both. I mean, my parents um, were not religious. They were secular Jews. I mean, I think in Poland they'd been very, very assimilated. And but on the other hand, they didn't hide the fact that we were Jewish. And we, you know, we celebrated holidays. We did everything at home.
Mm-hmm.
But when I had a child, and she wanted to have a bat mitzvah, so I went hunting for a synagogue. And in my 50s, I joined a synagogue, and I started learning more about Judaism. And of course, the whole Tikkun Olam is part of our tradition. And so what I see is that my parents may not have belonged to in any kind of an organized religion, but everything they did
Right.
espoused Jewish values, the core Jewish values. So, you know, now that I'm in my synagogue, I'm part of the coordinating committee for Tikkun Olam.
And which synagogue is that?
It's Or Shalom.
Or Shalom. Yeah.
On the east side of Vancouver. Yeah.
Lovely. So before I let you go, I just wanted to hear about a little bit more about what it felt like to be a recipient of the Order of Canada. What does that mean to you, and how was it to receive the news?
I will tell you a story. So I found out in November. I mean, I think everybody found out in November, but we're asked just to only tell our immediate family, to wait until the official announcement. So I was driving over the Burrard Street Bridge. I had a doctor's appointment, and once I'd made sure that the phone call wasn't a scam, and I actually took it in, which was quite overwhelming. You know, I went on and did the things I had to do, and then I came home intending to phone my daughter, put her on speakerphone, and tell her and my husband at the same time. I walked through the front door, and I discovered that my cat had pooped and thrown up in the front hall. So the first thing I had to do was go into the kitchen and get some rubber gloves and some cleaning stuff and mop up and clean the floor. And then I went into the kitchen and something had spilled on the floor. So I had to help my husband clean up. So half an hour later, I got to phone them and phone my daughter and tell both of them what had happened. But I thought, this is great. You know, the world is giving me a message. You may be Order of Canada now. You may be a member of that esteemed cohort, but you still have to clean up your own messes. And that's kind of how I feel about it. It's
Great answer.
It's a huge honor. And when I look at the names of all the people who've received it, I frankly still don't quite believe that I'm one of them. But what I'm finding it's making me do is think about things like my family, what you asked me, you know, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Also think, okay, so now what are you going to do? Because this is not about resting on your laurels. You know, the motto of the Order of Canada is translates roughly as they want to make the country better.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I don't have a huge number of years left in the total scheme of things, but I don't know what the answer is, but that's what I'm asking myself.
Wow. So much to take in. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure we have so much more that we could talk about. I hope we get a chance to talk again soon.
Yeah, that'll be a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Olga Korper is one of the appointees to the Order of Canada for her contributions to the visual arts through her impassioned promotion and exhibition of Canadian and international contemporary art. Olga, welcome to Bonjour Chai.
Thank you.
So, I read that in 1973, while you were on honeymoon in Europe with your second husband, George Korper, you realized you were unhappy and wanted to do something more with your life. What did you end up doing?
I ended up like a maniac opening a gallery in Toronto. And it is not an easy profession, but it's been a wonderful journey. Of course, I got incredibly lucky, but it's been a great life. I've had a magical life.
Sure. So what sort of has happened in that magical life of yours? What did you discover? Who did you promote? How did you sort of come to visual arts itself?
Well, I graduated from the art college. I was a trained artist and I taught art for 5 or 6 years. Then I decided that this was this was what I wanted to do with my life. Quite a mad decision, but I got very lucky and it's turned out okay. I would rather be in the gallery than just about anywhere else in the world. When my partner and I go on vacation, he can't go right back to work. He has to take an extra day to brace himself, whereas I can't wait to open the gallery and walk in. And Leo says about me that I'm one of the luckiest people in the world because my hobby is my job. It's a difficult hobby, but it makes for a difficult but rewarding job.
Now, I do admit to being a bit of a novice or a beginner for the visual arts itself. So I was just really curious how you spot a great piece of art. What makes something really stand out for you?
Oh, golly, everybody asks me how I choose my artists, and I have this simplistic way of doing it. First of all, artists approach me all the time, and I, generally speaking, turn most of them down. But my simplistic rule is that I go by my stomach. If I fall in love with one piece and absolutely lust for it and crave to own it, then I know the artist is for me. And that's a really simple rule, but it sure works.
So really just something speaks to you right out of the image itself or the picture, and you just sort of says, that's it, I have to have it.
Yes, absolutely.
Fair enough.
It's really an issue of falling in love.
I'm curious if your Jewish identity has ever intercepted with background in the art world at all.
Not really. I don't pay attention to race or religion. I have Jewish artists, I have Black artists, I have gay artists, I have females, males, and that doesn't really enter into the picture. It's all about falling in love with the item itself. And that's the only rule.
And growing up as a Jew, has that ever meant anything to you itself? Has that ever brought anything to you as an artist itself?
I don't know, probably, but subconsciously. I don't show any religious art of any religion, Jewish or Christian or anything else. And I'm not really keen on structured religions. I have a wonderful client who's a Catholic priest, and I once apologized to him for not being very religious. And he said, but Olga, but you're very spiritual, and that's what counts. I love him.
I'm sure. I'm curious how, when you found out that you were obtaining the Order of Canada, what did that mean to you?
I was absolutely thrilled. I was just tickled. And when I told one of my artists, she was so excited, and she said, oh, Olga, you've been knighted. I think, isn't that wonderful? The arts don't get a lot of media coverage. So we're very grateful for all acknowledgements. It's a wonderful thing. I'm honored and tickled.
Absolutely. I do want to bring your attention to something that sort of has made it into the social media and online scene a few days ago. About 5 days ago, a journalist, Deirdre Kelly, posted something online, a story that was on the front page of the Globe and Mail for over 25 years, raising accusations that you engaged in theft against a Canadian artist, Yves Gaucher, who has now passed away. She made some claims that Mr. Gaucher was never really repaid in full for a loan he made to your gallery, and that you sold some 12 of his artworks without his initial knowledge. I know you've brought this up in the past, but would you like to comment on these new allegations that were raised 5 days ago?
Well, first of all, I didn't see them, luckily, but Yves Gaucher was a huge favorite artist of mine, and he was totally repaid for everything. And it wasn't for his artwork. He actually loaned me money to buy the building that I'm in, and he was repaid totally.
Is there anything else in terms of that you wanted to comment on, in terms of those allegations itself, in terms of what happened and whether there were any other issues involved in that?
No, Yves was very angry with me in the end, and actually it was not unjustified. I mean, he was right to be angry. Now, he insisted on loaning me the money, claiming that I had made it for him to begin with, and that he insisted on putting money into this. And then all hell broke loose. And I lost the building. I'm still in it, but I'm a tenant. And it was very hard to find the money to pay him back, but I did.
In the end, yeah. Do you have any regrets with that?
No, I have very few regrets in my life. And when I say that I've had a wonderful, magical life, I have very little that I regret. The one thing I regret is that my father is not alive to see me get this award. He'd be so tickled.
I just wanted to know, is there anything else that you would like to say?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm really looking forward to. I want to meet the Governor General's dog. The dog sounds wonderful, and I love dogs, and I love Rideau Hall, and I really want to meet the Governor General and the dog.
And when does that meeting take place between you and the dog? I don't even know the dog's name.
I have it. It came on a card. I think it's an Inuit name, and the dog sounds lovely.
I wish you all the best, and I hope you have a great meeting with the Governor General and her dog as well.
Thank you.
Olga, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Bonjour Chai. We wish you all the best.
It's a pleasure.
So I'm talking to Rabbi Adam Shire, who is the rabbi of the congregation Shar Shamayim in Montreal. And the reason why I wanted to bring you on, Rabbi, is because every week that I walk into shul, there's a big poster, a big piece of art almost. It has a list of all the names of all the people as of 2016, and to which since then we've had an additional 10 members of the congregation, people associated with the congregation that are members of the Order of Canada. And I thought that it's such a remarkable number. And I was like, what's it like to know that on any given week in shul, you probably have 2 or 3 pins with members of the Order of Canada, and just knowing that there's such a heritage there associated with Shar Shamayim?
I think it certainly is a point of distinction for our community. We are very proud of the fact that we have so many Orders of Canada and that many are regular attendees of our community. But I think it's also important to say that we think of ourselves as a family. We often call ourselves the Shar family. And when one of the members of your family is recognized for doing something great, that's amazing. It makes you proud, but we're proud of the successes of all of our members. And it might be something that we even take for granted in many ways as a community, the fact that we have so many Orders of Canada, and a really remarkable number within a community. When you put it in those terms of how many have been added to that list over the last number of years, one almost becomes accustomed to these announcements within the congregation, but each one is really an amazing point of distinction for us as a community. Do you think that there's something specific about the Shar that it attracts people that are so talented? Do you think that it inspires? Do you think that the party sandwiches are the things that inspire people to become so driven and high achieving to get all these awards? Yeah, I wish we had that secret that we could share with others, of the party sandwiches or the occasional cholent that we'll bring out at Kiddush. That's what does it. The scotch that's served at Kiddush. That for sure we could capitalize on that success. But I don't know if it's something that a community does per se, but I would say that the numbers and the individuals who are members of Order of Canada certainly impact the community, that there are certain aspects of our community identity that we focus on excellence, that what we do is when we do something, we do it well, that we focus on our role as a Jewish community within broader society and broader Quebec and Canadian Montreal society. I think those values are driven by our membership. I don't know that it's something that the synagogue impacts these members of the Order of Canada or vice versa, or the reverse. But I do think it's something that impacts the character of the community when we have so many members who have achieved so much in the world.
We didn't have a chance to speak to the most recent one, the one that got me thinking about this, the most recent one who's just got nominated in December, our colleague and friend Morris Goodman. Are there any stories, anecdotes, moments that you think, oh, this was a time that made me realize he is deserving of the Order of Canada?
I think it's a great question. And certainly Morris has impacted, he's impacted the world, but he's also impacted our congregation. I think that's a really important point for really all of the members of the Order of Canada, that we have this great list that stands outside in our lobby. And the list, yes, it needs to be updated because many have been added since we recognized the members at a major congregational event a number of years ago. But the point of the list, and the point that I'll often make when pointing people to this list, is that the people on that list had an impact in the world, but also in our community. And that certainly is something that, while we stand back and look at what Morris has done in the pharmaceuticals industry, what Morris has done in the areas of philanthropy, and certainly in the last number of years, taking that to a whole new level with their family foundation, that's quite extraordinary. But what they've done for us as a community is something that we value as well.
Are there any notable members that you always think about when you look at that list?
So when we give tours of the congregation to groups, it could be anybody visiting, it could be a group of students, it could be some tourists in Montreal who came to see the synagogue, but I'll often take them to the upstairs lobby where we do have that sign listing the Orders of Canada, and I'll show them with great pride what our congregation has contributed to broader society. And I'll note certainly the variety of disciplines that are in that list, the fact that there are people in the worlds, of course, of business and philanthropy and academia and sciences and medicine and music and architecture and accountants and lawyers. I mean, basically every discipline possible is represented on that list, which I think is unique for a community. And one person that I'll often point out was somebody who I was very fortunate to know for a number of years. My first years at the congregation was a man named Morton Brownstein, who was the president of Brown's Shoes. And I'll point out that he certainly made an impact in the world through his charity, through his philanthropy, but also in our congregation, he was our candy man, which means that when the children would run into the synagogue, the first person they would run to, when my kids would run into shul, they would run to him before they would run to me. And he was this wonderfully affectionate, warm person. And that was his role, was as the candy man. And when he went to Brown's Shoes as well, went to the counter to check out, you would see there also that he made sure that there was a jar of candies in his stores as well, because that's what he was the candy man. He was bringing sweetness to the world. And so I'll tell that story, and then sometimes I'll add as well that we were honored as a community to have at the end of his life, to have his funeral in our sanctuary. And one of the ways that we offered a tribute to him was to have these big jars of candy at the entrance, so that when people walked in, walked out, they were able to experience the sweetness of his life. And I think that's very reflective of so many of the members of the order, in that what they brought to the world was what they brought to our synagogue. And in this case, it was candy, but in other cases, it's certainly is a drive for excellence. It's a sense of philanthropy. It's changing the world. It's pride. It's all the things that make the members of our community so wonderful. Are
there any? Are you have a list that you secretly? You don't have to put out names now, but is it something that you end up thinking about for the future? That I should be thinking about this person to be nominating, or I should be involved in pushing that person's name forward, or what are the other honors? How does this, the life of a rabbi who's dealing with people who have these honors, who should have these honors? How much does it impact your thinking when you interact with these people in general?
No, I don't think of who should be nominated for Order of Canada. I do think of who should be nominated.
Everybody should be nominated.
I think of who should be nominated for Chatan Torah and Chatan Breshit and Eshev Chayil and all of those honors that we have. Who should be honored by the congregation is more my thinking. But I know of many members who are certainly worthy of consideration. If anybody would solicit my opinion, I could certainly make some recommendations, but it's not something on an ongoing basis that I think about.
Well, thank you for leading such a congregation. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us, and I hope that there will be many more members under your watch, and I assume that there will be.
Absolutely, I certainly hope so, and certainly trust that there will be. And again, we're very proud of the role that our congregation plays in Canadian society and Montreal and Quebec and within our community as well.
You can find links to the honorees in the show notes, and you can email us at bonjour@thecjn.ca to let us know what you thought. We'd also love to hear any stories you might have about a colleague, a friend, or a family member that is a member of the Order of Canada and how you found their story to be moving or valuable. Email us at bonjour@thecjn.ca or tell us about it in our Slack channel. What's our Slack channel? It's our frozen chosen group of people that like to talk about the issues that they heard about on the show or issues that they'd like to hear on the show. If you want to become a member of our Slack channel, all you have to do is send us an email at bonjour@thecjn.ca and ask to join the Slack channel, and we'll add you in and you can join the conversation. I had the chance to speak with Rabbi Daniel Korobkin of the Bayit in Toronto this week. He wrote an op-ed in the CJN, which was a reworking of his sermon from last week, where he talks about what to do with the books of Chaim Walder. For those of you who haven't been following the story, Chaim Walder was a very popular Orthodox author and psychologist who wrote a series of books called Kids Speak. In November, Haaretz came out with an extensive investigation that documented how he sexually assaulted several women that were under his care. He was subsequently found guilty by a religious court, which is actually quite rare in these types of cases, and then, as likely as a result of that, took his own life the next day. In the aftermath of this, one of his victims was so upset at the honor that he was still receiving even after his death that she also took her own life. It's a terrible and very sad story, and there is much hope that this may be a turning point within the community in terms of sexual assault, but only time will tell for that. So joining us to talk about the issue here is Rabbi Daniel Korobkin, the rabbi of the Bayit in Toronto. Rabbi Korobkin is also an immediate past president of the Rabbinical Council of America, and he just wrote a wonderful op-ed about this for the CJN, and I decided that I really felt it was important to follow up about this. Rabbi Daniel, thank you for coming on Bonjour Chai.
Thank you, Rav Avi. Nice to be here.
When the article, you speak about the idea that we really have to move to a place of action, and the idea of action being more than just removing this person's books. It's from our libraries. It's speaking to our children, recognizing that telling our children that sometimes people are not what they seem is an important first step. What are the other steps that you think need to happen, and what are the steps that are already happening?
Right. So, it's a very painful prospect to essentially strip our children of their youthful innocence when we would rather them look at the world in a much more optimistic, positive way. As a matter of fact, the CJN piece was really an abridged version of my sermon, the drasha that I give now on Fridays because of COVID. And someone responded to me and said that, because I had basically said that there are so many heroes that our children have from Jewish history, and those are safer heroes than the heroes that are alive today. Like this fellow Chaim Walder was a great heroic figure for so many children because he came to their defense and he said, he understood them and he gave them a voice, and those are wonderful things. But with the living heroes, you never know what dark secrets and sinister aspects of them may exist behind closed doors. And someone responded to me and said, that's not an acceptable solution in his opinion either. Our children need living heroes. And to a certain degree, I agree with him. And that's where the struggle comes in. The struggle really is, how do you create that balance for your children? That on the one hand, you want them to be able to have role models and adults who are good people that they should look up to, that they should strive to emulate, whether it's a rebbe, a teacher, a community leader. And at the same time, make sure that they're aware that you can have heroes, but realize that every human being, whether it's a famous athlete or whether it's a famous rabbi, or any other kind of heroic figure that they may have in their lives, a musician. These are people who are human beings with flaws. And so we have to do what Rabbi Meir said in the Talmud about his teacher, who was a heretic. We have to extract the fruit and discard the peel. Now, the problem is with a guy like Walder is that he used his position of power and influence with children to exploit them. And so at the same time that we have to debrief our children and make sure they know that everyone's just a human being and everyone makes mistakes and everyone has flaws, we also have to very carefully educate our children about not allowing themselves to ever be put in a situation where they're alone with an adult, even an adult that they trust, who makes them feel in any way uncomfortable. And so that was really part of the message that I wanted to give, is that we cannot afford to allow our children anymore to feel that sense of youthful innocence and to view everyone as a good person. Most people are good, but even good people sometimes make terrible mistakes, and that we can't allow our children to become the victims of those mistakes, those tragic figures.
So if we take that attitude and we mirror it to the adult level, which is where a lot of these issues also come up, we used to say that there was, this person was a bad weed, this person was an exception, but generally most people are good. It's clear that this is something more systemic, right? And I even used to be the one that would say, oh, you see, it's only in the Orthodox world and liberal rabbis don't have these issues. And clearly that issue is no longer true, that there's been sexual impropriety and financial improprieties within liberal Jewish communities. And the conservative movement, the reform movement has seen, their share in recent years. So what can we possibly do to maintain this idea that, well, we're generally a good community, but at the end of the day, we can no longer, trust that this person is good until they're proven otherwise, right? We clearly have this issue where so many people no longer, when there's so much trust, right? The people that are victims, the people that are coming through to try to break that trust about these supposedly great figures, aren't believed anymore. And we see this even in, with the passing of Chaim Walder. And one of the reasons why this woman who took her own life in the aftermath of his suicide is that she said, even after this person was dead, we have these people that are, lauding him and extolling him and going to his funeral and his shiva as if he was the greatest man alive. And this is perpetuating this idea within the community that we don't really believe the victims, and and that these people are still people that we have to, work towards. So what can we possibly do within the community to say, if you have a problem, if something is an issue for you as an individual, you should come forth, you should go to the authorities, we are going to believe you, because just because a person is a rabbi, we don't want to automatically give this person the benefit of the doubt anymore.
I mean, I think all of that which you said is true. We have to be cautious, though, to not incriminate an individual based on one person's accusations. In the case of Walder, there were, I believe, 22 individual reports or 22 individuals who came forward and implicated him. And when you have a preponderance of evidence like that, there's absolutely no way to exonerate a person. I think we have to be very careful that still we believe in the principle of innocent until proven guilty.
For sure. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying there are many times when somebody comes forward and is either told, don't come forward because it's not right, this person is an Adam Gadol, this person is a great man, whatever it is, or somebody comes forward and we tend to downplay it or we denigrate it because we say we're not interested in doing this. How many times have we heard that we say we don't talk about these things because it's Lashon Hara, when in reality it's evil speech, and in reality it's the opposite. We have a responsibility to say these things if we have these suspicions. And I feel like the atmosphere in the community is the thing that needs to change. And so that's what I think I'm sort of going towards, is like, what do you think can possibly change within the community that will change the entire atmosphere so that we're no longer feeling like nobody's ever able to come forward?
Right. So I think it depends on which community you're talking about. I think the community that you and I come from, Ravavi, is very different from the extreme Haredi community that a segment of, within the Haredi world in Israel today. There are many different voices and many different approaches. And I think slowly, even the people who had a knee-jerk reaction to come to Walder's defense are slowly coming to the realization that they've made a terrible mistake. I think that as horrified as many of us are in the Western world to see how backwards some of the responses were, I think the Haredi world has made tremendous strides over the last decade or so in coming to terms with the fact that we do have to completely have a zero tolerance policy for anyone who takes advantage of another human being whether sexually or otherwise, and we have to make sure that the authorities are involved, and that person has to be completely excised or ostracized from the community. That message certainly, I think, is true in Jewish communities throughout North America today. It wasn't always that way, admittedly. I think that there was a time, even in Toronto, where I currently reside, where there was a cadre of rabbis who felt that if a person is accused of sexual misconduct, it should not go to the authorities, but should be handled by the rabbanim in a very hush-hush way. But that is no longer the case. I think there's a general consensus that even among the most ultra-Orthodox or Haredi rabbis in our community, that if a person has been mistreated, they should go to the authorities, and the rabbis will support them. I do believe that that's currently currently what's going on the ground. If I do ever hear about something contrary to that, I'll be happy to correct myself. But I do believe that that's the status right now.
If you think that there was one thing, if you were able to change something within the Haredi community to say, if this changed, then I think we'd be in a much better place, what might that be? Is there anything practical on the ground that you think?
Oh, well, it's very hard to say that, because I think it's a package deal. You know, the Haredi community is committed to maintaining very high walls to create what they perceive as a protection of their community from deleterious, harmful forces that are within the secular culture. And once you put up walls, it goes both ways. I can't see you and you can't see me. And it's very hard for me, as someone who sort of is in between those two communities. I studied in a Haredi yeshiva, and I come from that world to a certain degree, the yeshiva world, but I'm also very much part of the modern Orthodox world, and I try to straddle both sides. And the fact of the matter is that that it's very hard, as someone who does not feel that he's fully part of that community, to say this is what would need to change. I really do feel it's more important to hear from the Haredi voices themselves, people like Rav Lopiansky, who has been writing about this subject, people like the Rashiv of Eish Torah now, who's Rabbi Berkowitz in Israel, who's been quite outspoken on this matter as well. Those are the voices that need to be the most prominently heard right now for the Haredi community themselves. I don't see it as being a productive exercise for me to say what should or should not happen in the Haredi community, because, we have enough problems in our own community. We have our own issues that we need to address in our own community. It's really not for us to cast our own criticisms on someone else's community. We have to try and be part of the solution. We have to extend whatever aid and assistance and empathy and anything else that we can help with, to make sure that anyone who is a victim and whose voice who feels that their voice is not being heard, we have to be there and make sure that they know that our address, our phone is always available to them, and that we are there to assist them and make sure that their voice is validated. But I think more than that, I don't think it would be appropriate to hear from anyone other than the leadership from the Haredi community itself.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that touched me the most from the sermon, which I read in the original and I read in the adapted form that's going to be out in the CJN, is that you spoke about the difference in terms of changing one's mentality, and you speak about paro and the difference between the word chazak and the word kaved, right? And one is about strength, and if you've actually change something, and that's where your strength comes from, and kaved is where things are heavy, where your muscles relax. You talk about the couch potato phenomenon, and I think that we are no longer in a place where we can be kaved, where that status quo just lives and let lives, and you sort of like feel heavy and you can't do anything. I think the time is for chizuk, the time is for making action, and to really move to a place of of strength, and I hope that we are in a turning point within the community. And thank you for at least speaking out about this to your community and to the community at large.
And thank you for all you're doing to get the word out, Avi. Thank you so much.
For our word of wisdom this week, we go back to Rabbi Baruch Frydman-Kohl.
When my kids were growing up, I adopted an approach that I had heard associated with Professor Isidore Rabi, who had won a Nobel Prize in physics. His mother used to say to him when he would come back from school, "Izzy, did you ask a good question?" Not, "What did you learn today?" And framing a good question is quintessentially a Jewish act. In this week's Torah portion, twice we're told, "And when your children ask, this is what you should say. Vihigadata," you have to have a response, you have to have a narrative. And it really becomes the basis of the Haggadah and Passover, the 4 questions, as well as of the 4 children who are very different from one another. And clearly not all questions show either interest or identification with what we're about. And some can really be negative and dangerous. But we have to encourage those kinds of questions in our synagogue and in synagogues and in our community, in our families, about who we are as Jews, about our relationship to Israel, about our relationship to Canada. And I would say that as Canadian Jews, we have to reclaim a narrative about Canada and why Canada is so important and so vital. And we have to reclaim a narrative as Jews about Israel and what makes Israel such a special country. Why are we so bound and so concerned with Israel? Rather than try to answer that question, I'm just going to leave you with that. Thanks very much. Shabbat Shalom.
And now it's time for our Nachas of the Week, where we like to talk about things that made us feel good over the past week or month at this point. What's been giving you Nachas this week, David?
It's going to have to go to Jewish space lasers this week that zapped Marjorie Taylor Greene off of Twitter this week and Facebook as well, too. So yay, Jewish space lasers. May you continue to do your fabulous work across the Jewosphere.
Alana, what's your Nachas?
My Nachas is a book that I discovered. Avi, I wonder if you've read this before. Jewish Meditation, A Practical Guide by Aryeh Kaplan.
Aryeh Kaplan, yes.
There you go. Classic. It's the same thing. So before I headed off on my 5-day trailer retreat, we were gathering some things for my boyfriend's parents and saw this book sitting on the shelf. And both him and I have a meditation practice, and we were very fascinated by it. So we took it with us and read parts of it out loud. It's very interesting, and it's basically an actual practical step-by-step introduction to meditation and the Jewish practice of meditation in particular, to quote from the back of the book. And he kind of talks about how this is written in the early 80s, and he actually passed away a year after the book was published. And he talks about how during that era, a lot of people in the Jewish community were getting really into transcendental meditation. And he wants to shed light on the meditative practices that actually exist within our own history, which I found really fascinating because I have a yoga teacher training, which also includes meditation. And this was a really interesting way of blending two things that are really profound and important to me. And Aryeh Kaplan is really interesting, too, because not only was he a practicing Orthodox rabbi, he was also a physicist. So he brings in a lot of really interesting perspectives.
Yeah, he passed away when he wasn't even yet 50. It's a tragic story, but he really was prolific during the time that he was alive and did a lot of really interesting work around Jewish mysticism and just Jewish ideas in general. So yes, check him out. If you like that, though, I would highly recommend, I'm going to give you a recommendation that's a lot more in a contemporary idiom and really spoke to me a lot more. A book is called Be Still and Get Going, a Jewish meditation practice for real life. And it was by Rabbi Alan Liu, who is one of the most influential authors that I ever read, even though he's only written about 3 books and he passed away about 10 years ago. He wrote this book called This is Real and You Are Completely Unprepared, about the high holidays and as a spiritual transformation. I literally reread it every high holiday period, but we can talk about that when we get to next high holiday period. But he did write a really good book on Jewish mindfulness, and that's this one.
I would love to check that out.
I can lend it to you next time you're in town, and or just
like a plan.
Go pick it up at your local local library or on wherever the Jeff Bezos sells books. Really, really, really great book and really interesting. I've learned a lot. He was much more influential in my mindfulness practice, which is more based. I'm a big fan of Sam Harris, and I end up using a lot more of his ideas because I like the spiritual but non-denominational approach that he sort of takes, so that it doesn't fall too Buddhist, but it doesn't become too Jewy or too Christian. It's just sort of a thing, and I like my mindfulness to be relatively neutral, so I'm a big fan of that as well.
I like listening to Sam Harris's voice when I meditate. It's a very soothing voice.
This is absolutely true. Sam Harris has mastered the art of the soothing meditative voice.
Avi, what's your nachas?
My nachas of the week. I heard a great podcast episode by the folks at the Dybbuk Theater. Do you know the Dybbuk Theater?
I do.
As Jewish theater people?
Yeah.
So they have a Dybbuk-cast now, which is really interesting. And the episode that turned me into that was based on a Montreal figure, a popular Montreal figure by the name of Sami El-Maghribi. Literally means Sami, the person from the Maghreb, his name is Solomon Amzalag, and he was a cantor in Montreal for many years. But before and during that time, he was also a popular singer of Andalusian music from Morocco, popular singer, and they did a whole episode about him and his life. And they did a great job with it. It was in conjunction with the Museum of Jewish Montreal. So if you care about Sephardic music in general, or the lives of interesting Montrealers or interesting Jewish characters, check it out. It's on the Dybbuk-cast Theater Dybbuk's podcast, and it's called, I believe the episode was called I Sing and I Pray, which was the name of one of his famous songs. So go check that out. Thank you for listening to Bonjour Chai for the week ending Friday, January 7th, Shabbat Parashat Bo. Our producer is Michael Freeman. Technical production is by Andre Goulet. Our music is by So-Called. We are a project of the Jewish Living Lab and are distributed by the CJN Podcast Network. You can listen to all our past episodes on our page at thecjn.ca/bonjour, and you can subscribe to the podcast and automatically receive all episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, you can email us with comments at bonjour@thecjn.ca or chat with us on our Slack channel. I'm Avi Feingold.
I'm Ilana Zakon.
And I'm David Sklar.